Well, hello. It's good to be back and to see you all with us today. Now, we're going to be going through the topic, and the topic we have for today is after all, it's only money. When should you retire? Well, I'm your hostess, and that is Amy Rose Herrick, and I'll be acting as your presenter today. Now, one of the things I should let you know is we really like you to put the questions over there in the Q&A or in the comments, because at the end of the presentation, I will be circling back and we'll answer all of those. And so don't hesitate to put that in. Now, I know some of you are going to grab your camera and you can take screenshots if you'd like, but when you register for this class, you will be getting a copy of the slides as a PDF that will come to you by email. So, take your notes, but then that also will have you give you something to work with a little bit later. So let's go ahead and let's start sharing a screen. And I'll let you know that I am going to be popping in and out between the screens and then back here. So as you see me looking up and down a little bit, that's just because I'm working with more than one screen. So here we go. So as I said, we're going to be talking about after all, it's only money. When should you retire? And of course, one of the things we always have is our lovely disclaimer. These are general concepts for illustration, educational, and discussion purposes only. Unique situations require special handling to obtain desired results. Now, neither your presenter, moi, or your host is providing any kind of individual or group advice in this presentation. You should consult your financial or tax advisor and lawyer for advice regarding your personal situation. You should consult other professional resources for assistance when considering or prior to making any changes to your financial situation. So having said that, we're going to go right into the presentation. I want to talk to you a little bit about, well, what does age have to do with retirement? Because when we go back, and in many cases, what you're used to is what Social Security is telling you is when your retirement is going to be, which isn't necessarily true. It's just a number. Now, some people define early retirement as 62. Well, I don't define that as early retirement. Some people define full retirement age as around 65, or as they're phasing it in, maybe it's 66 and 6 months for you. Well, what is delayed? If you're going by the Social Security rules, it says, well, delayed is 70. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think necessarily those are true. And so let me tell you why. I've got individuals who have retired in their 30s and 40s. Yes. Why? Well, it could have been that they sold off a business, that they'd had a successful idea, that sold that off and decided they didn't want to work that hard for a while. I've had other individuals who received an inheritance, and they decided that they could take that inheritance and for many years live modestly, and they could travel the world. That's what they have chosen to do. So they have retired from the workforce and they are living entirely different lives. So what is early retirement? 30s and 40s from some of the individuals I'm aware of. Well, what about what is full retirement age? I don't know. Again, if you're looking at the Social Security charts, they're going to tell you 65, 66 and 6 months, 67, whatever the case may be. But is that full for you? And then when we look at the delayed retirement, where you're being told that by Social Security standards, you're delaying your retirement to 70. Well, I'm going to go back to this picture again here real quick. And I'm going to tell you that if you look at those individuals on the left, well, I would say Morgan Freeman has stepped back, but I don't think Morgan Freeman retired by any means. He's still doing quite a few things. And of course, if you look down, how many of you, raise a hand, how many of you saw the Rod Stewart concert that was AARP not too long ago? I did. I enjoyed it. It was good. So those individuals, whereas they may have retired from full-time activities, I really don't think that they retired completely from what they loved to do. And that's part of the difference in it. Now, when you get into retirement, one of the things that I want you to start thinking about, and this is going to be very different for some of you. How many of you realize that when you go into retirement, you get a new full-time job? You didn't think about it. And sometimes you're not really well trained for this new full-time job, but you get a new full-time job. Your new full-time job when you go into retirement is you become an asset manager. Yeah, an asset manager. And as an asset manager, the assets that you are going to manage comes back to your time, knowledge, your ability, your surroundings, your desires, your health, your talents, and of course, you get to manage your income stream. So when we're going into retirement, I want you to start changing the focus of that. Whatever you did before, you now are a full-time asset manager, and all of these things fall in line with what some of your assets could be. Now, the other thing is, I don't want you to be fooled. Some people will go throughout their life and they have difficulties. They bounce checks. They have late pays. They've got collection accounts. Their credit score is poor. They really don't have much in savings. And this has been a lifestyle. Not being judgmental here. Different people do different things. But one of the things that retirees will often say is that, well, I live on a fixed income. Well, let me fill you in. The bulk of the W-2 world lives on a fixed income. Now, entrepreneurs often have incomes that go up and down and sideways, and they invest in businesses and different things. So theirs can be a little different. But the bulk of the world lives on a fixed income. Any of you know any school teachers? Do they get to change what their pay is, or they live on a fixed income? The same can be true for any government office worker. In most cases, this is the wage, this is what you're going to live on. So how we live with our income before we go into retirement has a huge impact on how you're going to be able to live after retirement. Because in many cases, you're still going to be on a fixed income. Depending upon your income resources at retirement, that could be less than you're used to living on. It could be more. It could be about the same. Each and every one of you is going to be different on how that works. Now, here's where we need to talk about something that I like to share about. I don't really think that I can have a meaningful talk to you about retirement unless we talk about the word enough. Enough is going to be very different from person to person. And I also think that there are different types of retirement when we start thinking about enough. Now, we have a dream retirement. This is like I joke about, putting on your rose-colored glasses. Everything goes perfect. I don't know about you, but my life has not always been perfect. You could have a realistic retirement. This is what my health is. This is what my income is. These are what my talents are. This is how I'm going to leverage them. Some of you will go into retirement and you will forget that job that you had, but you start working part-time or you do something else for that stage. And I also want to tell you the stages of retirement change over time. And it goes back to a lot of those different resources that you have can change. Now, this one is really hard for some people to work at. Many of you have an idea or a dream of when you want to retire, but that can be impacted by other things. If you're married, your spouse could have health issues that cause you to come out of the workforce earlier than you anticipated because of care needs. Maybe you have aging parents or grandparents. Maybe your family dynamics have changed. The other thing that nobody really wants to talk about, is sometimes your body causes you to have to come out of the workforce a little earlier than you anticipate. So we always have the plan A, I get to do what I want. You kind of have to have a plan B. What if I don't get to work until X or what I have planned? It could be because of arthritis. Hey, I have it too. It could be because of your stamina. It could be your strength. It could also go back to some of the very physical occupations that people have done become a lot harder or impossible to do when you get a little bit older. That also can affect whether you can do your home maintenance and do the yard work and the things you used to do. So it's not anything that's really a negative. It's just a natural part of the aging process. And, we don't all remain 18. And we've been using this body, we've been using these joints for a long time. So that's the other thing that we want to talk about, because there's all different kinds of retirements that we're going to go over today. What about a debt-free retirement? I mean, that is a dream for some. You retire because you have eliminated all of your installment debts. But just because you eliminated all of your installment debts does not mean that you won't have some debts in the future. You need to have some savings. Are you ever going to replace a car? If you retired in your 60s and you live to 100, are you going to keep the same car for 40 years? Probably not. So there's still going to be some things that we need to look at going long term. Even if we go into retirement debt free, we need to look at some things that are going to need to be taken care of going into the future years. Oh, I love this picture. What about retirement as a lifestyle? I don't know how many men you have. My husband would probably not do this, but it would be fun thinking he would. So can you afford to retire here, wherever here is, and do the maintenance? And, if you live in a 3-story house, will you be able to manage the stairs a long time? What about your location? Are there any support services nearby? So if your retirement is a lifestyle, does the lifestyle where you are match the lifestyle that you plan to have into retirement? Now, for some of you, that's going to mean downsizing to a less expensive home, but I will tell you that smaller is not always cheaper. If an individual goes from a home into a condo, for example, there are condo fees that are every month, in addition to, power costs and those other types of things. You still have to have insurance. So, when you're looking at smaller, depending upon where smaller is, and it could be a smaller home in a different location, but maybe the property taxes are now $6,000 or $8,000 a year. So there can be some changes with that. If you're looking at it, what can you afford? And maintenance, mobility, location, all of those things come into play that go with the cash view. Now let's talk a little bit about what about retirement is a lifestyle. So when we're getting into lifestyle, are you thinking you want to move to be closer to children or grandchildren? That's a pretty common thing. Where are you going to live? Here's another one. I've had individuals who have bought homes close to where their children are. Their children are still in the workforce. The children got jobs in a different area and had to relocate. Would this be an issue for you? How many times could you follow your children, or how many times would you want to? Because if you've ever bought or sold a home, you understand that there are costs associated with that. So as a lifestyle, what about that? There's a big movement at this point for tiny houses, or some of those things that are built on the back of a property, or they're built as an addition to a home. You make some arrangements with the family because, if you spent $100,000, pick a number. If you spent $100,000 or $150,000 to add on to this property that happened to be on your daughter and son-in-law's, they actually own it. What agreement do you have when that house is sold for you to recoup your investment, unless you can just walk away from it and let your kids have it, so that when you move with them and go to the next place, if you need to modify or do something else or put more money into a house to get what you need as a unit, how's that going to work out for you? What about climate? I'm not doing snow and ice anymore. It's not good for me. So climate is probably going to affect what your lifestyle is. What about the support services? What will you need and what do you want? And support services is not just going to and from the bank or to and from the grocery store. Do you like social clubs? What types of things do you like to do? Well, we got to make sure that those are available for you too. Some of you who live in the Virgin Islands, you are very blessed that you do not pay any state income taxes, and you're not paying sales taxes. If you're looking at going to a new location, what are those going to cost? And property taxes come in there too, or personal property taxes. I'm going to give you an example of Kansas because I'm very familiar with that. I come back and forth there. Kansas, sales taxes, even at the grocery store, are almost 10%. Yeah, so the groceries may be a little less, but the 10% sales tax on everything definitely adds up. They also have personal property taxes here on vehicles. So depending upon how old the vehicle is, you're going to pay personal property taxes. Kansas also has personal income taxes. Now, there are things like Social Security, if you are under a certain income level, is not taxed. I said under a certain income level. But then they also have income tax, and that's about 5% of your income. So when you're looking at relocating as a lifestyle, we also have to look at some of the financial implications of that. In the Virgin Islands, I see property tax bills. With a lot of the exemptions we have, some people will only pay a couple of $100 a year. It kind of goes up from there. Even in modest homes here, I am seeing property tax bills that are $2,500 to $4,000. So those type of things can really make a difference. One of the things I suggest you do, consider trying it out as a renter. Be a renter. See if you like the area. Figure out what you like, what you don't like before you're locked into buying a home and realizing that you've made a mistake. And it may actually be much less expensive for you to be a renter than to have all the responsibilities of ownership. And it all depends on what you're looking for at that point. Oh, here's a good one. What about retirement as a travel lifestyle? Can you afford to travel? Where do you want to travel? And when I think about obligation travel, do you feel obligated to go once a year to visit with family at X location? Got to build that into the budget. Got to build that into what you are able to do and what you want to do. Now, the other side of it is sometimes is it easier for you to bring family to you? Maybe you don't want to go to Pennsylvania in the wintertime. Is it easier for you to pay for some airline tickets and bring them every other year or do something else? What are you going to do with travel as a lifestyle? Where do you want to go? Oh, this one is fun. How many of you have ever thought that as travel as a lifestyle? I mean, there are some wonderful tools out there, and I'm not endorsing anybody, but if you go to like Skyscanner, if you use Google Flights, there's all different tricks and trips that you can do to really reduce the amount of your airfares. What about a travel lifestyle? I know one couple who did this as a honeymoon. They took a set amount of money and said, this is how much we've got. We're going to travel as far around the world as we can. Then we're going to come back and we'll have a little bit of savings and we're going to get jobs. They were gone a long time using some of these trips. They lived out of a carry-on suitcase and a backpack. That's it. They'd go somewhere when they'd been there for a little bit and they're thinking, it's time to move on. They'd go use a couple of tools, find out where's the cheapest place they can fly next and took off. Maybe you want a travel lifestyle where you're not tied to anywhere. Can you do that? Is it anything that you want to do? So that's a different kind of a lifestyle as a travel one. Travel lifestyles, there's another way that you can do the travel lifestyles. Some of you, have you ever thought about motorhome living? What about residing on a boat? Could you be a paid house sitter? Think about that one. Those positions are available all over the world. Could you trade house sitting for lodging? Vagabond, the 2 suitcase life. So if you look at retirement as a travel lifestyle, what does that look like? Does that mean that you have to do it forever? No, you may want to do it for a couple of years. You may find that you want to live somewhere else as a result of the travels, but you get to pick. What about as a volunteer? Can you afford to volunteer if it is part of your heart's desire? Now, you could do that locally. You could do it globally. NGOs, that stands for non-governmental agencies. Again, not endorsing anyone, but if you think about Doctors Without Borders, that's a type of an NGO. It could be a faith-based mission that is through the faith that you work with that has mission trips or that they have got locations. Science-based research. I tell you, what is your heart calling you to do? One of the funnest ones that I heard about, it's with a group that's called Earthwatch. And I haven't looked at anything lately, but I always wanted to do it. It looked like fun to me. Going to Tonga in shallow water, and you got to seed giant clams, which I found out only live in circles or usually. And that was that's what they needed volunteers for. You had to pay for your airfare to get there, but they could take care of your lodging and your food, and you would still have some fun time. So, is volunteering on scientific something that you would want to do, or archaeology? What is your heart calling you to do as you think about retirement? And I'm going to go right back to one of the questions, that I said before is you can't have this discussion without talking about the word enough. What is enough for you? You may want all of these things. You may want none of them. But how do we make them enough to be the retirement that you've worked so very hard for? We got to go into operating on a fixed income because it doesn't matter to me whether you stay put, you relocate, you're a travel vagabond, whatever you choose to do, you've got to have an annual budget. Now, one of the things that you can do is we want to see if there are ways that we can save money or create money that enables us to do what we want, but I don't want to change my lifestyle. Most people don't want to do that. So here's an idea. If you had a credit card that everything you can put on it, you do that with cash back. And if you've been to my classes, you've heard me talk about this before. If I put just $2,000 a month with a 2% cash back card, that's an extra $480 a year I can spend on something. And I try to get you to think about, what if you were to do something like this for 10 years? $480 for 10 years is $4,800. Do you think you could do anything with that? Because you don't have to spend it. You can let it accrue and, you save it for another day. What did it take? It didn't take anything. I have things like my phone bill. Every time I go to the gas station, every time I go to the grocery store, there are some automatic renewals. Any of those types of things that I can put on the credit card, I will, if it doesn't charge me an additional fee to do that, because I get the 2% cash back and it adds up significantly. The other thing, many of you that are watching this today, you are AARP members. AARP, there are discounts. AAA, there are discounts. There are different things that you can do that can help you stretch the income a little bit by accepting those discounts. This is an easy one, and people don't always pay attention to this. Many of you have insurance, whether it's car insurance, home insurance, life insurance, long-term care insurance. There's all different kinds of insurance. If you will take that insurance and you will pay it annually instead of paying it on a monthly basis, that can save you 3 to 8%. It's the exact same coverage, but it costs you 3 to 8% less. So again, let's think about that. I don't think it's an unreasonable figure to say that you may spend $5,000 a year on some kind of insurance or more. Well, 5 times 3 is $150 less if you paid it annually instead of monthly. If it was 8%, what's 8 times 5? 400. That's $400 a year less for the exact same coverage. Well, what's $400 a year less times 10 years? That's $4,000 more of your money that you get to keep. So lots of these little things can help support your lifestyle and sometimes fill in some of the gaps that you might know that you have that we can do. Also, with working with an annual budget, and if you reach out to me, if this is anything you want, this is one of the deals that I find, because what I find that is a killer is you're used to your monthly bills. You know about how much this is and how much that is, but it's the irregular expenses that get you. Now, if you look on this, you'll see that in this particular example, I've put everything from car repairs and vacations, clothing, gifts, medical, you might have co-pays out of pocket. We got things that aren't covered. You got dental expenses, glasses, do you do acupuncture? Do you have other things that are medical related for you? And then over on the right-hand column, you'll see, haircuts, home maintenance. Home maintenance, I tell my clients we need to plan on somewhere between 3 and 5% of the value annually to maintain it. I didn't say redecorate it. Now, if you had a $200,000 home, one of the things, 200,000 times 3%, I think we need about $6,000 or about $500 a month to take care of the maintenance. If the house is a little older, or we have stuff, we may need to go up to 5%. Well, that would be $10,000 a year. If you have a fixer-upper, that could be 10% a year for a few years. So I think the home maintenance one is often really downplayed. Then we've got all of these others, lawn care, school expenses, dry, whatever. So we go down to the bottom, and you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner that I have got, margin for other expenses you forgot. So the way that I work with this, and this works really well with my clients, is we try to set up a different account. Again, this applies whether you're working now or when you're retired. We call it an irregular expense account. I'm going to make the math as easy as I can. Let's pretend that you do this little exercise, or however you do it, you come up with a number. And we're going to make the number $12,000 because it's an easy number to work with. Now, out of that $12,000, these are all the things that don't happen every month like clockwork. They kind of hit once a quarter, once a year, as needed, whatever. Now, with this $12,000 hypothetical amount that works for me, I need to put away $1,000 a month into this separate account to fund those things. In Amy's perfect world, we want to fund it with 3 or 4 months in advance. Doesn't always happen, but in my perfect world, that's what we do. So we've got a little buffer. So if you just get started in one of those big bills, or maybe you're turning your insurance over to annually as part of this, we can pay that and not affect our cash flow. We put money in it consistently. I don't care if you put it in every 2 weeks, once a week. I don't care. I don't care if you put it in once a quarter when you get your dividends. It's got to be funded consistently. Then what happens is when these expenses occur, you know what? You got to go get the car fixed. That's no big surprise. Oh my, it's time. Oh, rats. I didn't plan on getting 2 dental crowns, but I got to do it. Here you go. We have got a resource and a source of money available to us to pay for these items as they come up. It doesn't affect our lifestyle. We've already built it into the budget, no matter where we are, and we can pay for them. The other thing that keeps you from doing is racking up balances on credit cards that you're not paying off every month. And they're accruing interest and they're costing you money. That's money that you don't get to spend on yourself. Now, let's pretend that I had to have $4,000 of dental work. Whoopee. On my $4,000 of dental work, I'm going to put it on my credit card because I'm going to get 2% back. It's only $80, but I'm going to get it. And then when the bill comes due, I just take the money out of my regular expense account and I pay off that portion of the credit card because I've already planned for it. I'm telling you, if you will adopt this, it will make things so much easier for your travel and all those other things. Now, if you find this account does not have enough money in it, ever, then you are underestimating your spending, and we can look and see what you're underestimating it, and you may need to increase the amount of money you put into it. If it keeps climbing and climbing and climbing, it may be that if you've included home maintenance in this account, you have not had a major electrical, plumbing, roof, refrigerator replacement, or something else, and that you will probably have a year that you'll end up spending much more. That's how that usually works. But this is a piece that in going into retirement, I have found before retirement, if you can train yourself to do it, and then after retirement, we're revamping this at least once a year because, again, travel and different things can change. It makes it easy to still live within your means and be very comfortable with what you can and cannot do. Now, we need to talk about taxes. I know everybody loves taxes. So we're going to talk about the 3 key tax years. Now, the first one is the year before you retire. Now, the year before you retire, you may have accrued sick leave or accrued vacation, or you're looking at some different things, and this may be our last opportunity to do a couple of things before your income flips again. So you definitely want to be speaking to a financial professional, your tax person, well before that year before you retire. So if there are any strategic moves that you need to make in order to be in a lower tax bracket or take advantage of some things, you definitely want to do that the year before you retire. Now, of course, in the 3 key tax years, after that year that retire, Social Security is watching your earnings. You need to understand those things because not everybody is going to retire on January 1st, and everything that happened in your life before that is going to settle. You're usually going to have some transitions in income and those type of things. Now, the next one is you're looking at, let's go back here. So the year that you retire, again, Social Security, there are different integral parts here that if you work with a tax professional, they can help you arrange the pieces to your advantage as much as possible. So you got that year. Then you got one more, and that one more is the full year after you retire. So now that you have retired, there are going to be a lot of different things, and you should have had some, you know what your income streams are going to be. You've settled in pretty good, but I don't want you to get too comfortable because things change when it comes to taxes. Just because we have got you all lined out the year before you retire, the year of your retirement, and the year after you retire, you know what? Tax laws change. Your situations change. Opportunities change. So I really don't believe that your tax return should look like a cookie cutter, exactly the same thing every year. If it does, you are not taking advantage of something. Whatever it is, it's very unusual for someone to have a tax return look the same year to year. So I would encourage you, when you're having those visits, what I frequently do with clients is when we finish a tax return, we do a projection. Sorry about that. We do a projection for the current tax year to see if there's anything that we want to change by December 31st that would be to our advantage. And then I often will do a projection for the next tax year. What is coming up, or how should we arrange the pieces? So before we even get to doing the taxes in spring or later of the following year, we've already had from the beginning of the year to start. Talk to your tax preparers and say, hey, what could I do differently? What is coming up? What should I know about? And this is another way that you literally can put thousands and thousands of dollars that you retain by controlling the taxes. And now I'm going to go right into why this is so very, very important and why we're spending some time on taxes when we talk about retirement. Now, I want you to look at my chart that I have up in front of us, and we have got a couple of different tax rates. So I would like you in the chat, I would like you to say, which one of these tax bills do you think is right? Is it number 1? Is it number 2? Number 3? Quick. So if we have the same $75,000 of gross income, that's the money coming in the door. Now you're going to notice in the second column, the taxable portion. It's the same 75 here, but look what the taxable portion is. You know, those are going to be deductions. There are different things here. The third column shows us what the tax liability is. And this one, this is how much money you get to spend after you pay your income tax liability on this. And this is strictly federal. So if you had $75,000 of gross income coming in the door, how much do you think your taxes would be? Do you think it's 14.67%, 502, 244? Well, let's look at that. Well, let's take the example number 1. This person has $20,000 of Social Security income. They got $23,000 of pension income. They have $7,000 from a rental property. Maybe that's the apartment they have under the house. Maybe it's a separate unit that they have. They took $25,000 out of an IRA or their 401k. There's a lot of alphabet soup, but let's say it's a taxable account. So their total gross income was $75,000. And with the pieces arranged in this particular way, their tax bill would be $11,002. So this is how much that they have left to spend. And that's how they have a 14.67 tax rate. So if you said number 1, you are absolutely right in what your guess was. Now let's look at number 2. Do you remember we had Social Security of $20,000 in the last example? Well, this person has the same amount. We have the same $23,000 pension. We have $7,000 from a rental property. So all 3 of these pieces look just like it did in the last one. But now, see this? Roth IRA, or NQ, stands for non-qualified. That is money that has no retirement titling on it. They took $25,000, so this was a change. They still have $75,000 of gross, but look what that one change in their income did. It dropped the income tax bill down to $3,766. So if I go back, see the tax due here, this one little piece, look at this piece. Now we've changed it, and it dropped the tax bill dramatically at this point to only $3,766. So if you pick number 2, you are absolutely right. Now, do we have anybody that picked number 3? So on number 3, notice that beautiful smile she has on her face. That's because she has got this figured out, because she has done some planning on how she's going to keep more of her money. Does she have the same $20,000 of Social Security income? Yes, she does. Does she have the same $23,000 in pension? Yes. Well, she decided to sell her rental property. Maybe she just didn't want to be a landlord anymore. She had money in Roth IRA or non-qualified, so she took that. And as she changed things around, she decided to take some money out of her CD instead. It's all her money. Look at what the amount of tax due was for this young lady. So in her case, she has taken the same $75,000 in income and has dropped it down to 2.44%. How much more money does she get to spend? Well, let's look at them. Again, if you chose number 1, number 2, or number 3, you were absolutely right. It is how the numbers are arranged on the page that makes the difference on what your tax liability is. And if you don't have these discussions and you're not planning some of those pieces, it's going to cost you a lot more money. So let's look at this example. So 11,000, 37, 1,800. Now, if you compare option 1 to option 2, you could take $10,000 a year less income and still be in the exact same position. Wow. That's $10,000 roughly that you did not spend in taxes. Wow. What's about $10,000 you didn't pay in taxes over 10 years? That's $100,000 more of your money you get to keep if you rearrange the pieces like you see in some of these examples. Could you do anything extra with $100,000 into your retirement? So this is the primary reason that you've got to get with your tax professionals on, those 3 key tax years, but then don't get complacent. Also have a plan for going forward so that we allow you to spend more of your own money and not give it away in income taxes. Now, if you put it in the comments, are you getting this? And do you understand, put yes, 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 yes. Do you understand how important that this piece is going into retirement? And I just don't see enough people talking about it and the enormous impact it can have on our retirees. Also, people who are working, these things apply to. Now, the other thing that we need to talk a little bit about is the 0% loan for 12 months, on Social Security. Is this for real? And the answer is yes, it's absolutely for real. Now, for some of you, you go ahead and you choose to pull Social Security, whatever age, whatever reason. What if you started a hobby or a business and it took off and it's making more money than you thought it was going to make? Maybe you got offered to come back as a contractor or something else that you didn't anticipate, and you're looking at your age and you're looking at the full retirement age from Social Security and you go, I blew it. I should never have taken this money, because if you earn over the threshold, they will take away $1 of Social Security for every $2 of earnings. And so you're going to forfeit money, and you're locking yourself into a lower benefit. There are circumstances that within that first 12 months, you will want to repay the money that Social Security has given you. You turn off the Social Security and you start it at a later date. It's like a one-time do-over, just once. It's all you get. But in the right circumstances, what it can do is it can increase your lifetime benefit that you'll be getting out of Social Security. So it's definitely something that you need to be aware of in those first 12 months after you start drawing that benefit. So as I mentioned, we're going to look at this slide just real quick here. If you get a situation where you are going to have to pay it back for every $2 in earnings over this amount, and we're going to go through some examples on this in just a little bit, you got to give money back. How many of you want to give money back? I don't think there's going to be any hands that are going to put up. So talk to your tax professionals so that you know how to arrange your pieces so you don't give any money back. Now, the other thing that we need to talk about is a lot of individuals go into retirement and sometimes you turn a hobby into a business. Now, when you turn a hobby into a business, this is something that there's a couple of different rules. One of them is called the 2 out of 5 rule. You must show a profit in 2 out of 5 years for this to be considered a business. It's just one test. There are other tests. Now, with that, the reason is that the IRS or the VIBIR, that we mirror those rules, does not want you to take a hobby and disguise it as a business. So there are different tests that are used, but again, talk with your preparer, because if you really do have a legitimate business, you're going to have business expenses. You may need to keep track of a mileage log for driving back and back to the post office if you're shipping or buying supplies. You may have a home office or a home workspace. Maybe you're consulting and you need an internet expense. So when you're thinking about this, talk to your tax professional about how could I arrange this to make it a business if it really is a business. If it's really not a business, don't claim it as a business. Don't do it. So along with those lines, we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to go through some income examples. And this goes right back to my conversation with you about planning your income to be able to keep more of your income. Now, let's say that you earned $17,600 when the threshold, the key word there is threshold, to keep all your Social Security benefits is $17,640. So you were underneath that number and you have not reached full retirement age, or it's not the year you retired. I mean, you fit this demographic. Now, on that $17,640 of income, you're still going to pay Social Security taxes. And a lot of people are surprised by this. Even if you are 99 years old and you are earning an income, you will still continue to pay Social Security taxes. So it doesn't matter how old you are. If you're earning an income, whether it's W-2 or it is self-employment, you will continue to pay Social Security taxes. So we got to take that off. The same is true as the Medicare taxes. We don't have to repay anything because we're below the threshold. So I also have 2017 estimated income taxes due on this money. So I think you're going to net about $14,000 on this income. You know, so you want to plan your number of work days or hours to, help you benefit that. So then let's look a little bit, and this is what can sometimes surprise people. Now, if you earn just $22,500 a year with that same threshold, and if you look back, that's not a lot more. It's a couple of $1,000s more, but look at what the ripple effects are. We still have this earnings of $22,500. We still are paying Social Security taxes and Medicare taxes, but what's this number? Repay to Social Security for excess earnings over the limit, because this $22,500 a year exceeded the $17,640 threshold. We have to give back $1 for every $2 in income over this amount. Then I estimated what the taxes would be due. So I think you'd net out about $15,000. So what that means is that you will only earn about $1,327 more. And in this hypothetical example, I've got you working 40 hours a week. I don't think I mentioned that on the last slide. So think about, in this example, for 10 weeks of the year, you are only earning $3.32 an hour. I'm sure that did not put a smile on your face. It may not be worth it to you to work an additional 10 weeks a year for only $1,300 more. And then that doesn't take into account what your additional transportation cost or anything else that may eat up that difference. So let's just do one more. Now let's look and say that you were paid $500 a week, all 52 weeks, with the same threshold. So a little bit higher income. Now we're up to $26,000 in income. We've got our Social Security taxes, our Medicare taxes. Those should be minuses. We need to fix that. Then look how much we have to repay to Social Security for the excess earnings over the limits. Plus, we still had our income taxes we had to pay. So I think you'll net about $16,786. What's that mean? If I take this minus what we would have earned underneath the threshold, you would earn about $2,513 more for working an additional 17 weeks a year versus only 35 without forfeiting Social Security benefits. So now that works out to you working at about $369 an hour for 17 weeks out of the year. Folks, this is one of the reasons why you've got to plan your income, and you also got to plan what you keep, because one of the other really painful things about these examples is you see where I'm saying repay to Social Security for excess earnings over limits. You give this money back, but you have locked yourself into a lower Social Security benefit for a lifetime. It may have cost you far more than it gained you in this kind of an example. What about $40,000 a year? I'm going to pull my Social Security early because I've earned it. Well, I don't know that that would be such a great idea. If you took $40,000, you still have Social Security and medical care taxes. Ouch, look at the amount that has to be repaid, over $11,000 if you were over the threshold. Plus you've got your taxes due. So I think you would net only about $19,000 if you made $40,000. You could probably question on this whether you should have taken Social Security. If you're within the first 12 months, like we talked about, you may want to pay it back because this may not be to your advantage. But that's another way where people in those couple of years there, when you're doing your retirement, and I say, don't get too comfortable. We don't want to give away way more than is necessary. So when I go back to operating on a fixed income, I'm going to repeat, you have got to have an annual budget, but you've also got to plan your income to know what you're working with. And you can see in these examples where you may have thought you were working with an awful lot more than you're going to get to work with. Now, the other thing that we need to talk a little bit about has to do with withdrawals out of retirement accounts. Now, when we have withdrawals out of retirement accounts, there is pre-tax and after-tax. They are very different. Pre-tax are the things that you're going to be used to using that come out of generally payroll deductions. Unless it has the word Roth on it, it's going to be pre-tax. That means that you are saving income taxes now, and then down the road, when you take the money, that's when you're going to pay the tax bill at whatever tax bracket you are. And we've seen that you can control that to a certain extent. But when you take money out of a pre-tax account, I want you to understand we use the term gross up. So if I want this much money out of the account, I have to gross it up, and I have to take a higher amount to cover the income taxes on this amount that I'm taking out, so I can net out the amount that I actually wanted from the account. So whenever you take money out of a taxable account, with rare exceptions, you are going to need to withdraw more than what you want in order to pay the tax liability. I will give one caveat here. If there is anybody here, raise your hand, and I want you to leave it up for a minute. If there is anybody here that you do not pay any income taxes, or your parents or your grandparents do not pay any income taxes, and they have any type of accounts that have like IRA, 401k, maybe they have taxable annuities, they've got some stocks with gains or whatever, you need to be talking to your tax professional, because in many cases, we can systematically liquidate or retitle some of these accounts and eliminate the tax liability completely. If they do not spend that money before death and they pass it on to heirs, then the heirs are going to pay the tax liability. This is one of those tools that we can use to help pass wealth between the generations, but legally eliminate the tax liability. So I'm going to throw that out there for you. as I think of things. And folks, you can tell this is not scripted. And remember, keep putting your questions, over in the boxes there so that we can come back to them. So we're going to talk a minute here about how much does it cost you to spend some of your pre-tax dollars that you put away in IRAs, 401ks, a simple 403b. There's lots of different deviations. Well, if you wanted to spend $10,000 out of one of these deferred taxation accounts, and I am saying that you are hypothetically in a 25% bracket, I'm going to say you're hypothetically under the age of 59 and a half, you are going to be paying taxes at the 25% bracket, but under 59 and a half, you're going to pay an extra 10% early withdrawal penalty. You're going to have to take out $15,500 in order to net $10,000. The only problem that I come across with this particular scenario is you are using up your balances very quickly and you're giving it away to taxes, which you will never see again. But there's a hidden cost that most people don't really talk about. If I took $10,000 out of my account and it was earning 5%, I am giving up $500 a year plus compounding for the rest of my life from that withdrawal. If I take out $15,000, I'm giving up $750 hypothetically a year at 5% for the rest of my life every year and all the compounding. So you really want to minimize what you're taking out of the accounts. And one of the best ways to do that is to take control of what the tax liability is. Now, the other thing that some individuals do in order to reduce their expenses, to reduce the withdrawals, which reduces the tax liability, I mean, it's kind of like dominoes falling, is they consider living abroad, because it may be that your retirement income, if you stay in your same circumstances, is not enough for you to retire and live comfortably. There are many places where if you relocate, some of them are abroad, some of them are not, that you could make your income be enough or more than enough by changing your location. Now, for some of you, this is not even an option. For others, it is an option, or it may be an option you never thought of. There are individuals that I'm aware of that split time. They like it up north, but it's cold in the winter up north. They rent part of the year up north because it was much cheaper than them owning a home, and they could still be near family and make it work. And then they live in another country the other part of the year, which gives them more than enough money to travel. They're not spending a huge amount of money on heating oil and all of those other stuff that was robbing their retirement accounts. They spend less, they do more, they're enjoying it a lot more. So, just going to throw that out. If you really haven't thought about it, it might be something that you need to do a little research on. And we're going to talk just a little bit about that. Oh, my slide's blurry today. I don't know why. Again, I'm not really trying to endorse anything, but this is a particular publication that I have used for a long time. It's called International Living Magazine. It gives you all types of tips about living abroad. There are many different resources that are out there that can help with this type of a topic if it is something that you're open to, whether it's for part of the year or for much longer time frames. And this was a book that they put out, and that was just fabulous. And it is How to Live Well on $25,000 a year. Now, for some individuals going into retirement, your resources may be limited. You may have the bulk of your income as Social Security. You may not be able to maintain a lifestyle. There may be health reasons, whatever your situation is, but this was a really good resource. And of course, there are others out there. Again, this is not an endorsement, but it's an example that if you're thinking about it, this could be a way. I know some of you are thinking about, should I turn part of my house into a rental? Maybe that will help me bridge the income shortfall. You're going to need to talk to a tax person, because you could open up some new deductions where you could write off as, let me give you a couple of examples. Let's pretend that I took part of my home and I turned it into a rental. Then Right now, you cannot deduct any of the cost of your wind insurance or any of your homeowner's insurance. But if I had an apartment, then I can deduct part of that against the rental income. If I share utilities, those are not deductible personally, but if I share them with the unit, then I can have that as a deduction. I also get depreciation. I get to take off part of the property taxes. And if I can't itemize, I can't do that. If I can't itemize, I can't take off part of the mortgage, but I could take it off on the rentals. So there can be some distinct tax advantages if you have a unit on your property that you should be exploring. Some of you may be doing it and you're not claiming it. That may or may not really be working with you. That's a conversation that you should go a little bit further. But the other thing is, if you haven't been a landlord, do you want to be a landlord 24/7? I'm just asking, because some people are well equipped for it. Other people don't want to screen tenants. They don't want to deal with the repairs. They don't want to do it. So for some of you, it's an excellent option. For some of you, it's a terrible option. You need to look at, if I want to do this, and if you wanted to be hands-off pretty much, what's it going to cost you on an expense to pass that off to a third party who handles all the screening, all the phone calls, because there's going to be a cost involved in that, to see if that works. And again, with working with your tax professional, you could do some projections and some what if scenarios to see what that might look like, to see if it really would increase your income as you thought, or if it would actually decrease your income. Each one of you is going to be unique. So again, you need to work with those dynamics that you have and be very honest what you're willing to do and what you are not willing to do as a landlord 24/7, 365. If you're going to want to travel, how's that going to work? You know, the other things, if you're starting to look at that type of thing, this is a Schedule E. And it must have been a conversion option, folks. I'm sorry, it's a little blurry. We'll try reloading it. But licensing and consumer affairs, depending upon the jurisdiction that you're living in, do you need to have any type of licensing for short-term rentals, or are you going to do long-term rentals? Do you want to do Section 8? There are some different ways to explore what you might want to do with a rental property. And I'm going to come right back to that word that I've already mentioned. We got to talk about what is enough. Now, I really want to take a couple of minutes and I want to spend some time talking about grandparents raising grandchildren. It is a reality. Most of us know about grandparents who are raising grandchildren. I needed to do that in my own family for a period of time because of significant health issues and a divorced child. I mean, it is what it is. You need to be having these discussions with the parents. The reason I'm saying that is, are you going to have guardianship? Are you going to be able to claim this child as a dependent on your taxes that can help you kind of through the back door that way with a couple of $1,000s of relief a year? If we have the death of the parents, there may or may not be Social Security benefits. It's going to be based on what the parents' earnings records would be. And that's going to be paid, for the person who's taking care of these children. Are you going to adopt these children? How's that going to, how will that affect whether they get Social Security benefits or not? These are some very difficult conversations. The other thing that I can tell you that I recommend, I do myself, is to have life insurance on the adult children who are the parents of my grandchildren. If that child was to pass away, and these kids are not raised yet, and it looks like I may be one of them to help them to raise, I need a pool of money to make sure that I can get them raised up. Because if I'm only making it on my income and I'm suddenly bringing 1, 2, 3, 4 kids into the home and I'm on Social Security, and depending whether they've got benefits or not, how hard do you think that's going to be? I'm telling you, grandparents raising grandchildren, they need money. They can give them all the love and they can do everything else, but folks, they got to have money to pay the bills. You need to have these conversations in your family. Enough said. You need help, reach out to professionals to help you design something. Then we have to talk a little bit about, should you draw Social Security early or later? Oh my gosh, this is a huge conversation. And there are so many different facets to this. It can be your health. It can be your resources. It can be you've had to retire early. I mean, there's a lot that comes into it. I'm going to really break this down to very basic. We're not going to talk about whether you get a raise that offsets it. We're not talking about taxes. We are just talking about the very basic numbers. So let's assume that you decide to pull it at age 62 and you're going to get $750 a month for 12 months. So in a year, you get $9,000, and I'm going real low on the numbers here. I know some of you are going, wow, that's not much. You know, it depends on the person's earning history. There are a lot of individuals I meet that worked off the books or they didn't claim their income. And you know what? If you worked off the books, you didn't claim the income, you didn't pay the Social Security taxes, you're not going to have a very big Social Security benefit. This can really affect families and parents and different ones. Now, if I wait to age 63, I get a $63 a month increase. So this is how much I get. So if I had 9,000, oh, it cut off part of my slide. There had to be something in the conversion today, folks. I'll reload it. $9,000 in hand beginning at age 62 divided by age 63 increase. I would have to have 143 months, or I would have to live 11.9 years to break even. So if I took the money at age 62, or I took it at age 63, when I reached the age of 73 and 9 years, I would have drawn the exact same money and had the exact same amount in my bank account. If I had a short life expectancy, I might look at pulling it early. The dynamics of the household. How long will I live? Well, that's a really great question on that one. Now, one of the things you can do is complete some of the quick life expectancy tests, and you should do one for your spouse too. Will it be perfect? The answer is no. But some of you are going to be absolutely floored when you look at your life expectancy and you start looking at when you should pull Social Security to see in some of these cases, it can make a huge difference in the amount of money that you are going to collect going forward. So how many? You know, I've got this one that says an assumption for living to age 87. So in looking at some of these examples, and I apologize, I didn't catch this, but it's obviously moved the slide down. Don't we love technology when it's not working for us? So in this particular example, if we waited for this $300 increase, so $1,300 a month, what's the difference is going to be? Let's see if it did it to me on the last slide. There we go. So when technology is working, so if we do the assumption to living to age 87, so we had 66, if they drew $1,000 a month for 21 years, it would get them from age 66 to 87, they'd draw $252,000. If they waited to age 70 and there was an increase of $300 a month to the same age 87, there would be $13,200 more in income they could spend. Now, I want you to think about the fact that after age 87 in this example, that spread is going to get bigger and bigger because there's going to be that additional $300 a month or $3,600 a year. So if you had another 10 years, you know, that is another $36,000. So these are very individual decisions that can go based on life expectancy. It can also go based on what your time frame is and some other resources. If I look at some assumptions, you know, how do I know my break-even point? Well, we can have a break-even point at $750 a month, 62 to 84. 65 to 84 at $930 a month. So all of these are very individual conversations that we can have. You know, in this example, whether you drew it, you know, at 62 or did it a little later, 90 is a break-even point. All of these are going to be individual answers that you should work about. Now, the other thing that we want to talk a little bit about is many of you have earned pensions. And with your pensions, depending upon the company that is giving that to you or the government agency, you have the ability to name a survivorship benefit. Most of them only allow a survivorship benefit to a spouse. But I have seen a few that if you are single and you are unmarried when you choose to take your pension income, that they will allow you to name someone else as the beneficiary. So we have a few examples that I've had in my clients where they were single. We ask and they said, "Whoa, you're not married." Yes, we do have a provision that you could name someone else. And they decided to name a child or a grandchild. So at their death, that benefit would continue for that other person's life. Spouse or no spouse, how do you know this? You're going to have to ask. Do you need to ask and plan this out before you're ready to fill out the papers? The answer is yes. But this can be an option, and you need to ask to know whether it is only for spouses or if it could be for someone else that you'd want to name. So what if you both have a pension? Well, if you both have a pension, then taking a survivorship pension for both of you means you're paying for one benefit you're never going to get. Think about this. If I die first and I've got named my husband to receive the pension, if I die first, then he gets it. If he names me and he dies first and I get it. But you know what? When the second person dies, the spouse is already gone. So you're not going to be able to get that particular benefit. So let's look and see about how a survivorship pension, could actually work in real life. Now, in real life, we have option one. We could say that this person, and this is all hypothetical just to get you the idea, you could draw $1,000 a month, but when you die, your spouse gets nothing. So whether I drew 3 checks or I drew 30 years worth, doesn't matter. At my death, done, period, through, that check ceases. Now, option two is I could take my spouse and during my lifetime, I get $800 a month. And at my death, my spouse gets $800 a month. So I am giving up $200 a month in order to ensure that we have a survivorship pension. So $200 a month times 12 times a year times 20 years, hypothetically, I'm paying $48,000 for this benefit. And let's say that I died in the 20th year, hypothetically. Now, my survivor would need to draw that pension for at least 5 years to break even. Is that a good deal? I don't know. It depends on how long my spouse is going to live or what our life expectancies are. The other thing that you might want to do is you might want to consider to do what's called pension maximization. Have you ever heard of that term, pension maximization? This is where instead of using the pension plan to ensure the pension benefit, you do it on an individual basis by putting life insurance on yourself. And with that life insurance at your death, that money is what would be used to replace the pension. Now, when we use a survivorship pension, that money is going to be taxable, whether it's you or your spouse or the named beneficiary. If you're single and they allow that, that money will be taxable to them. If you do the pension maximization and you use life insurance, then we set that up so that it would be primarily a tax-free pension going forward. You may have a little bit of earnings, but it is a concept that many people embrace if you're insurable and if it costs less than what it would cost to do the same thing in the pension plan. Do we have to do this in advance? The answer is yes. It's part of the overall picture so that we know, is this an option for us? Is this not an option for us? Which one is the most cost-effective option? So in saying that, let's go back to sharing our screens for just a minute. All right. So in this example, we're going to replace $1,000 a month pension. It's just a nice round number, folks, that we're going to be working with. So when we replace that $1,000 a month pension, we're going to have to assume that this account makes some amount of money. If I did $1,000 a month for 12 months and I said 35 years, Let's say that we were 65 and that's going to age 100. We got to pick something. So that's what I did. So if I earned absolutely zero interest, I would need $420,000 of life insurance. Could I buy that for less than what the pension reduction would cost? Or is it more important to me to look at passing assets on that are tax-free? Again, your house, your rules. If I was going to earn assumed an average of 2%, then I would only need $303,000 in life insurance benefits. I'd earn 2% every year. I'd get a $1,000 a month. And you'll notice by the time we hit 35 years, we have pretty much exhausted the account. But if the person died anywhere in this time frame, let's say they died at the 10-year mark, there would be about $236,000 in the account that could go to someone, most likely pretty much tax-free, unless there was a little bit of earnings on it, that would pass on. Now, you'll notice that as the amount in this appreciation rate column goes up, the amount of life insurance goes down. It is my personal preference with my clients that we really try to stay in this 2 to maybe 6% range, because some years you're going to do better, some years you're going to do worse. I am really reluctant to go up into the higher rates, because you have got to get this each and every year, or this is not going to work for you. But again, we got to talk to professionals to see if this is something that you should do. Now, the other thing I'm going to tell you is that before you sign anything, make sure that you have talked to a professional. Make sure that this is the best option for you, because once you sign the papers, you will not get a do-over. Now, there's another thing that we should talk about when it comes to, incomes and into retirement. With many of my retirees, when you go into retirement, if you are a couple, now, when I'm going to say couple, doesn't matter whether you are a married couple or not, because if you have a long-term commitment for whatever reasons, and you are going into this and you're living on both of your incomes to support the household as a couple, whatever that couple looks like in your house, then we're going to have what I call the big check and the little check. The big Social Security check and the little Social Security check. It doesn't matter who gets them. But here's what happens. And we're using both of these checks to support the household. If the person who receives the big check dies, that check goes away. If you are married, you've been married more than 10 years, there's a caveat, then you may get yours increased to equal what the check had been before. You have still lost the small income in the household forever. Got that? We have the big check. We got the little check. If the little check person dies, your benefit does not change. You have still lost the little check in the household. I don't care if it's $1 less. So a lot of my retirees, you don't think about this, or they say, oh, you don't need life insurance going into retirement. Well, if your household is dependent on that check coming in, and it's dependent on a pension check, and those both stop at that person's death, it can be catastrophic for their surviving spouse. So what can we do about that? I never even thought of this. Well, there's another facet of this that I'm going to get to drop the bomb on too. One of the cruelest things, I think, when a person becomes a widow or a widower, whichever the case may be, that person is no longer married. That means that their income tax bracket goes up. It's kind of like an additional insult. So not only has their income gone down, their tax bracket has just gone up. Those two types of things hold hands. Why do you have to talk to your tax professionals? Did I mention don't get too comfortable, because things can change? Now, you can do absolutely nothing, and you can hope, that you die first, so you don't have to worry about this. It's really up to your choice of how you protect or how you provide for your survivors going into retirement. But you can't wait. You need to do this planning well before it needs to be in place. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, hey, Amy, I'm single. You've just been talking about couples. Well, what am I supposed to do? Well, the Social Security decision is easy. We're going to probably look at your life expectancy and look at a few other things, and it's going to be based on what is best for taking care of you. Then we're also going to be doing, plan your retirement annual budget. But one of the things that we have got to do is we have got to incorporate some long-term care. Long-term care should be incorporated in every household, but a lot of people have this idea, well, if I need care, my spouse is going to take care of me. As long as your spouse is healthy enough to do that, I agree. Now, what happens when both of you need care? Well, it's not pretty. We have to do it, but we definitely have to do it for our single individuals because they don't even have that backup. Okay, raise your hands or put it over in the box. Put this over in the box. Put it in the chat box. How many of you have family who do not live on island? Yes, 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 yes. Even if they wanted to take care of you, are they here or do we have to take you there? Do they have a place there to help you? Do we have the resources to do that? Here and there are very different locations and very different dynamics, and they have very different costs or abilities. So especially for our single individuals, we've got to take care of that because taking care of you is absolutely paramount. This is not anything that most people like, but we need to talk about it anyway. Many of you have been divorced. Many of you have family members who have been divorced. Many of you have friends in church and different ones, coworkers that have been divorced or who are going through a divorce. Now, with those individuals, have you ever heard of a quadro? It's called a Qualified Domestic Relations Order. In your divorce decree, if there is a pension, if there is a retirement type account, it usually will be a part of the division of assets. Before you settle any divorce action when a pension or retirement accounts are on the table, you need to be having a discussion with a qualified planning professional, because I can tell you right now that, let me give you an example. $200,000 of equity in the house is not equal to $200,000 in a retirement account for someone who's 50 years old. Let me tell you why. $200,000 in a house, I could say we're going to have selling costs, we'll have closing costs. So 200,000 minus maybe 10% in selling costs. So that 200,000 in equity really may be only worth $180,000 because it's going to cost money to sell the house to get to that equity. I could do that. And I've done these kinds of things, dividing up assets. $200,000 in a retirement account for an individual who is 50 years old is not worth $200,000. You remember that example that we gave earlier? Let's say that this person wanted to take, and I'm going to grab my calculator real quick. Let's go ahead and I'm going to actually put this one up on the screen because I think this will be helpful. So let's share the screen on this real quick. This person, if they have a $200,000 in an IRA and they said, I'm going to use this money because I have to go buy a house and I got $200,000. No, you don't. At $200,000, that would be on top of whatever your income is. I'm going to guesstimate that this may bump you into at least the 25, maybe the 32. We'll be conservative. We'll say it's 25, but I know it's going to be more. And did I mention you were under age 59 and a half? You are 50, so that's another 10%. So at a minimum, $70,000 is going to disappear in taxes. I think it's actually going to be more. So the person who got $200,000 in a home equity in a quadro really got $180,000. The person who got $200,000 in a retirement account that is taxable, that they're going to have to pay the taxes on, and that doesn't mean if they move stateside, they could lose more than that. They got $130,000. So my point is, that on a quadro, these are very important, and it's also very important on how the assets are split up. The reason that I am harping on this a little bit is because with this qualified domestics relations order, there is a lot of confusion about, well, who does the paperwork? Your attorney is not responsible for doing the paperwork. You are. You need to be with a financial advisor who can help you take possession of that money as rapidly as possible. If it is pension related, you need to do the steps to notify the pension fund so that if you were awarded, let's say that you were awarded 30% of a person's pension, that it is on record before you ever get there that 30% of this money is mine to protect your retirement income. Do you remember that enough I'm talking about? But we got to know what enough is, and we got to know what our resources are. Let me give you one real quick horror story. Man and woman get divorced. No surprise, that happens. She had a quadro. It was to take half of his 401k account. She didn't know she needed to do the paperwork. She thought the attorney did that. She didn't worry about the fact she never got a statement in the mail. She never got anything. She didn't even think about it. A couple of years later, he got remarried. That's nothing unusual. He's still working at the same company. That's nothing unusual. You know that sucker died. When he died, he had changed the beneficiaries on her account, on his 401k sometime before, and he had listed his new wife. No big surprise there. She claimed the money. I would. Had my name on it as beneficiary. The company gave her the money. No reason not to. She's thinking about this. Little ways down the road and going, I'm supposed to have half of that money. He's gone. She's dealing with the kids, they're grieving over their dad and everything. I should check on that. So she calls the company. Hey, and they're going like, we don't know what you're talking about. You're going to have to get us some legal documents. So she did. Well, here's how that worked out. She never turned the paperwork in. He didn't turn the paperwork in. The company was never notified. The money had already been distributed to the beneficiary of record. She had no rights to that money. She could sue her ex-husband's estate for the money because of the divorce decree. There's only one problem. He had a really good financial planner. There was nothing in his estate, so there was nothing to get. And she would have been taking it away from her kids, who were the beneficiary had there been anything there. How do you think that felt? She had no legal grounds to sue the new wife because the new wife didn't do a thing wrong. She did not, there went several $100,000 of her retirement because she didn't fill out a couple pieces of paper. Now, are you gonna get a quadro if you or your family members get a divorce? Absolutely, if you talk to me or another financial advisor, and these are part of the marital assets. Are you going to fill out the paperwork just as soon as that gavel falls? You are, if you're going to talk to me or another really qualified financial advisor, because you cannot afford not to turn in the paperwork. Let me give you another scenario because I really want to hit on this. Let's pretend, because I like round numbers. Let's pretend there's $200,000 in this account and you've been awarded half of it. This person invests in stocks. I don't know. It was during a crash. That $200,000 now has gone down to $85,000. What do you get half of? Do you know? So I am very adamant when I'm working with clients and when we're talking with attorneys and things about a date, specifying a date that you get half of, whether it is the date that you get half, which is the date of filing, half of, so that if they continue to put contributions in, you are not going to receive those. Is it the date the divorce is final? Is it some other date? I do this to reduce the legal expenses, the haranguing back and forth, and also if there's fluctuations in account values, if we have established a date that this is to be divided, there is no question what your portion is going to be worth. It's going to be based on the valuation, which is easily proven on that date. Enough said? All right. I'm trying to help you here because these are all maybe parts of retirement that you hadn't thought of, but they make a difference. So, like I just told you, who fills out that paperwork? You do. Have you been divorced? Do you know somebody divorced? Go grab those divorce decrees and look them over. See what they have to say in them. Now, the other thing that you want to look at is managing your personal level of investment risk. Did you set it and forget it? I'm going to tell you, your crock pot is not, your portfolio is not a crock pot. You got to do something with it. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to share with you too. Now, when you get into retirement planning, some of you want to talk to a professional. Some of you want to be very close to the vest and you don't. I understand that. There's room for all of us. Now, one of the things that you may or may not be aware of, and I'm just going to go this pretty quick. Now, on the AARP website, they have got a lot of really fabulous resources that are available. And one of them has to do with their retirement calculator. If you've never known that that was there, that might be something that you want to look at too. You can get started. It's very easy. There's a lot of little questions. Are you legally married? You should know the answer to that one. What's your age? What's the age of a partner, whether you have one or not? So you can go through on these questions. How much is in your retirement account? There's a lot of different, data that you can put in this. What's your estimated Social Security benefit? Well, where are you going to get that? You're going to go to ssa.gov and you're going to pull that off. I will tell you that we've run into a little bit of difficulty in the Virgin Islands with addresses. When you put your address in, you may be as Kings Hill, VI. You may be as Christiansted, VI. You might be St. Croix, VI. So if you cannot get this to work on the website, go over to the Social Security office on island and they can help you figure out what your address is. And then they can also give you this, help you get that report. But I think you're better off to make sure you get access online. It makes it very easy as it's updating. But this tool that they've got on AARP is very helpful. So it also has some lifestyle questions. This is where the money is. You're going to notice green and red. Well, green is usually good. Red is not. And so it will give you, what some shortfalls are. And then it comes back to, well, what if you don't like what you see? Well, you can change some of the assumptions. You can change your savings amounts in the assumptions, but if you're not going to change them on your monthly basis, you're just lying to yourself. Could you adjust some of your lifestyle now? Can you pretend you never saw the information? Can you avoid using tools like this? But they're available. And they can make such a difference in what your future looks like going forward. So I encourage you, all different reports that you could pull off of here. So we want to spend a minute. We're going to talk about what is a non-qualified account. Now, a non-qualified account is something very easy. Non-qualified really just means that it doesn't relate to retirement. It may in your mind, but the title isn't related to retirement. A non-qualified account. Do you have a checking account? That's non-qualified. Do you have a savings account? That's non-qualified. Do you have a brokerage account where you buy and sell stocks or you have mutual funds, but it doesn't have anything like an IRA or a Roth IRA or 401k in the title? If it has nothing that specifies retirement, that's a non-qualified account. So with non-qualified accounts, those are going to be resources that go along with, I will call it a pool of money, that when you're arranging the numbers on that tax return, could we pull this to bring us down into a lower tax bracket? It's still all your money. Just because you've gone into retirement does not mean that you can't spend the money in savings and that you only have to spend the money in your IRA accounts. That's a real misconception. And that's one of the ways that we can decrease your tax bracket is thinking your money is all yours. Where do we pull it from that helps you keep the most of it so that we're not giving it away to income taxes? The other thing that you can think about, this is usually popular on self-employed individuals, but not just self-employed individuals. So you put in place your own tax-free personal pension plan. You can do this whether you're self-employed or you're W-2. Now, this is just a hypothetical example. Now, again, you I have purposely made this so you see no age. You don't see if they're male or female. This is so generic. I just want you to get the concept. So this is just a sample. I want you to understand that a personal pension plan is built on a life insurance policy that is a permanent policy that has cash values. That is what it is built on. You cannot do this with term coverage. You cannot do it with group coverage. So let's specify that part. Now, in this hypothetical example, this person sold a small apartment building and decided they didn't want to be a landlord anymore, but they wanted an income stream. And they also wanted to leave something for their family. They had some reasons here. You can have an individual who puts a couple of $1,000s a year into this, into hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So there's a ton of flexibility. This is just one example. So you're going to see in this year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This hypothetical person put $95,000 into this. That was the amount that they put the check in every year or auto drafted it out of their account. Now, this is a long-term program because you'll notice that if they surrendered this policy, the amount that they had put in doesn't equal what they have paid into this account. So if I decided after 3 years, I don't really want to do this, then I would get back approximately $176,000. It's an option. Depends on what year you cancel it. But I'm going to show you a couple of different things here. If I put $95,000 into it, hypothetically, this first year on this example, and I died, I never got to pull any income out of it. Do you see this death benefit? Whoever I have named as my beneficiaries would get a little over $1.7 million. So I have leveraged that $95,000 into $1.7 million that would go to my beneficiaries tax-free. Whether that was my children, my spouse, if I wanted to give it away to charity, that's really up to me, or any combination of the above. Now, you'll see where this starts to have brackets down here. Well, beginning in this year, they're starting to take out $40,616 a year in tax-free income. So they'll get to spend it all or do whatever they want with it. And when they do that, you'll notice that the death benefit starts to go down a little bit each year and the amount of surrender value. So if they did it and said, no, I think I'll just take my money out of it. So you can see that there is a ton of flexibility here on what a person wants. This hypothetical person, we already talked about that. Let's go down here. This hypothetical person, oh, I went one too far. They died in this particular year. That's the death benefit. They hadn't drawn anything. Now let's pretend that they have drawn it for all of these years, and this is actually the second page. So let's say they drew it for 20 years. So they have taken 20 years worth of tax-free income out of it. They pass away, and their beneficiaries still get $338,000. So for some of you, if you are looking at enough, you may need to put some pieces in to make sure that there's enough. It depends on your resources. It depends on what some of your goals are. So you got to have some homework. It's time to start doing some realistic income and expense projections, because this is going to be one of the most valuable tools that you have to see where enough is, where not enough is, and what some of your options are. And remember, we're going to go right back to what has age got to do with your retirement? There are individuals who, when they've looked at the deals and putting the different pieces in, what if I relocated? What if I lived abroad? What if I did this? Said, you know what? I don't have to work until age 67. I could quit now. I'm 56. If I change these pieces, that could be exactly what they want. It could be, okay, well, if my health goes downhill, I could retire now and I could be okay. But, I'm going to keep working because I really like what I do. It's all about having the choices that aren't just dictated based on your age, because Social Security or your pension plan has told you at this number, this is what you get to do. You have a lot of control over that. And so let's go back to Mark Twain. If you've come to my classes, I love this one. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bow line, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, and discover. And we're going to finish this up because we have covered so much. Again, these are general concepts for illustration, educational, and discussion purposes. You have a unique situation. Go contact your advisors. We're really encouraging you to take this information and your questions back to your legal counsel, your tax advisors, your financial advisors, because we want to arm you with some of the tools to make some very wise decisions.